What's up, guys? Welcome to Daddy Dimes Radio. We're back today with episode 15. Um, we got a lot of stuff going on this episode, but let's go ahead and get started with today's MLB weekly recap. A lot of stuff happened this week. Let's go ahead and go over it. The New York Yankees dominated the Cubs as Matt Carpenter became the first Yankee ever to have 6 home runs in their first 10 games with the team. Of course, Matt Carpenter is getting very old now, spent much of his career with the Cardinals. Now he's with the Yankees, and he's had a little bit of a rebirth back to his prime days when he really was a very talented hitter, and he's hitting very well right now for this Yankees team, and starting almost every game now since he's been signed. And then let's talk about Tony La Russa. The Rangers defeated the White Sox in the 12th inning, 8-6, and 11-9 in the 10th this week, all amidst the controversy of Tony La Russa's call against the Dodgers, where he called for an intentional walk with Corey Seager up the bat. And the White Sox fans are just upset, and they have the right to be. La Russa didn't make really too many other bad mistakes against these Ranger teams, but just as the team loses, the fans have to have somebody to blame, and La Russa making that poor call put him out there. And I think he'll definitely make it to the end of the season, but with all the talent that the White Sox have, if they don't succeed in the playoffs, I could see him definitely getting fired. The Giants sweep the Dodgers. They finished their series off with some great defense to win 2-0. The Giants, that's what's been winning them these games the past 2 years, again with a roster that doesn't look nearly as good as on paper as they have been these past 2 years. But a tremendous defense and pitching from they continue to make new arms that nobody's really heard of become great. And they just have a great system right now, and they just find ways to win games, similar to how the Oakland A's were a few years ago, and how the Giants were 2010 to 2014 when they won, maybe 3 World Series during that time period. The Twins beat the Rays 6-5 on a big grand slam from MLB batting leader Luis Arraez. Batting, what is he batting? Like 360 something right now is what I want to say. Not a whole lot of power from him, but he's hitting for a very high average, which of course we now know in the past couple of years that on-base percentage is much more important. But it's always great when you are the MLB batting leader. Tommy Edmonds' walk-off homer won it for the Cardinals 5-4 against the Reds. They escaped the upset there. And the Cardinals looking like, with the Brewers' big losing streak, which was extended to 8 games by the Nationals this week, the Cardinals looking like a clear favorite for their division right now, with the Cubs, Reds, and Pirates all being bottom dweller teams. And again, the Brewers going on this skid now. Though I do expect them to rebound and make some smart moves at the trade deadline, something that the Cardinals haven't done as much at the deadline the past couple years as we could have expected, and it's led to them not succeeding as much in the playoffs. And then finally, the Padres, who are surprisingly having a similar record to last year without Tatis. And I know it's only one player, but when that guy gets on base so much, scores so many runs, and knocks in so many runs, it's just pretty crazy. But of course, they still have an incredibly talented roster that just kind of failed at the end of the season last year. They beat the Rockies 2-1 in the 10th inning this week. Just another close game. But now, a little bit more exciting stuff for the MLB here. Let's go ahead and go over my MLB All-Star ballot for 2022. Let's get right into it with first base. For the American League, I chose somebody very surprising. You might not have even heard from him, but he's got great numbers and beat out some of the fan favorites like Vlad Guerrero. But I chose Ty France of the Seattle Mariners, putting up incredible average, slugging, and on-base percentages with a decent amount of homers and RBI as well. Not really sure how good he is defensively, but mostly the All-Star game is chosen off of offense. Then in the National League is an easy choice with the Cardinals' Paul Goldschmidt having an absolutely incredible year for St. Louis, showing a little bit more of what he was like in Arizona with those crazy numbers for his on-base percentage. And then second base, I chose Jose Altuve yet again here in the American League, having another great year. And there's really just not – I don't think there's too much second base talent right now in the league compared to what we've had sometimes. So then the National League, I ended up going with Jeff McNeil of the Mets. Of course, has been a huge part of the Mets having a really strong year this year, even without Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer for the majority of it, hitting for an incredibly high average as always. And then at third base, it was a really easy choice for me for both leagues here, with Rafael Devers doing absolutely incredible in Boston. And I would say the same thing for Manny Machado with the Padres, really stepping up in the absence of Fernando Tatis, and really being the leader of the San Diego team. At shortstop, had a little bit of a tough decision in both of these. There were kind of two main competitors, but I ended up going with Tim Anderson of the White Sox for the American League and Trey Turner for the National League. Trey Turner, I still think, is a top 10 player in the league, with all the tools he has, being a 5-tool player in the infield, which we don't see too much. A lot of time we see that for outfield. But let's go ahead and get into the outfield, where, of course, you choose 3 outfielders from any of the outfield positions for each league. And for the American, I went with Taylor Ward, who's off to an incredible start this year, who was a top-rated prospect that hadn't really blossomed yet in his first couple of seasons, but he is really having a breakout year this year, and hopefully that continues after the break as well. Aaron Judge, of course, who's been in lots of talks of contracts and stuff this year, but he's probably the best outfielder right now in the American League. Of course, not nearly as good all-time as Mike Trout, but present day, Aaron Judge, I think, is the best outfielder probably in the game of baseball offensively. And then I also had Byron Buxton to round it out, hitting for a great power and on-base percentage. Then in the National League, I got one surprise, and that is Jock Peterson, who, of course, was a tough choice. Not really sure if he belongs here or not, because he's not an everyday player. He's a platoon bat, but he has such great numbers that I think will continue, and he'll really help the Giants in the postseason like he has in the past with the Dodgers. And then in the outfield, we have 2 kind of household names, Ronald Acuna and Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts, I think, having the best season since he joined the Dodgers. And Acuna, I think he'll continue to heat up, and he's still playing incredible, but kind of get back to his pre-injury form. And finally, to round out these rosters, an easy choice at both of these leagues for this position. At designated hitter, I got Yordan Alvarez of the Astros and Bryce Harper of the Phillies for the National League. And then let's go ahead and get into the big headliner of this episode. That's the NBA Finals, which currently played 3 games. Warriors are up 3-2. Lots of debate between who the MVP should be right now, between Andrew Wiggins and Steph Curry. I personally believe Curry, just because of how incredible he played in the first 4 games. And, of course, the Warriors don't win Game 5 without Wiggins, but they don't win Games 2 or 4 without Curry. So it just balances out more to be in Steph Curry. Even though Wiggins has had more of a two-way impact, Steph had just been so dominant Games 1 through 4, and I'll think he'll return to it in Game 6 and possibly 7. But let's go ahead and get to a quick game-by-game analysis, starting with Game 1, where after a very close first half, the Warriors went on a big run in the third, but it was nowhere near the run that the Celtics put together in the fourth quarter to end up winning the game by 12 after being down by, I think, as much as 16 in the third quarter and going into the fourth. Of course, a huge part of that was Al Horford really turning it on in the final quarter, but I would say the MVP of the game was Jaylen Brown, as he was just better overall, I would say, throughout the game. And right now, if the Celtics were to come back and win in 7, I would give the MVP to Brown. But Horford has probably been their number 2 guy all series, not Jason Tatum, who of course has had a great defender and Andrew Wiggins guarding him. But he really is just not shooting well at all. But another name to mention that's been doing great is Derek White coming off the bench. But that is something that I think the Celtics need to improve on this series. White has been great off the bench, but they haven't gotten much production from Grant Williams or Peyton Pritchard, who I would expect a little bit more from. And I know it's the NBA Finals, so they're getting less minutes, but especially Grant Williams, I feel like he needs to step up because he is a better offensive option, I would say, than Robert Williams. Just, of course, Robert is incredible on defense. But Game 1 goes to Boston. Let's go ahead and talk Game 2 real quick. So, of course, the Warriors absolutely stomped the Celtics in this one. And, of course, Steph went off in this one for 29 with 5 3-pointers. Oh, I did forget to talk about how Steph broke the record for the most threes in one quarter in the first quarter of Game 1. My bad on that, but let's go ahead and skip back in to Game 2, where Jordan Poole had a great game as well. So did Kevon Looney, actually. Went 6 for 6 from the field, and, of course, had plenty of rebounds to go with it. Looney continues to be a great role player at center, even though this season see James Wiseman more in the regular season. Kevon Looney has just been so good for this team, and he's been on their team for plenty of years. He has experience in the finals. And we'll go ahead and get into Game 3 here, which the Celtics bounced back with a huge win of their own again. In the first 4 games were all blowouts. Steph played great again in this game. So did Jaylen Brown. Sorry about that. But the Celtics just played better as a team, and that's why I think Steph deserves the MVP if the Warriors win, because in these first 4 games, it was more of the Steph Curry show, and everybody was talking about him. Then all of a sudden, after Game 5, Andrew Wiggins goes off on offense, and suddenly he's the MVP after one game. I don't think that should be. If Steph was the MVP after 4 games, I don't think it should change after one game from Andrew Wiggins. Even though he was great defensively the rest of the games, his offense wasn't there as much as Steph. And then, of course, we get to Game 4, where, yet again, it keeps going back and forth until the Warriors win 2 in a row with Game 5. But in Game 4, the Warriors shook up the minutes a little bit, put in Otto Porter to start instead of Looney, but Looney still came in and played 28 minutes. Jordan Poole got 21 off the bench. But another huge game from Steph Curry, dropping 43. Clay had a little bit of a bounce back game after having a really rough start in the first 3 games, put up 18 points with 4 threes in Game 4. And Andrew Wiggins, who actually led the team in minutes, put up 17 points. But again, when you just compare that to Steph's 43, I don't see how you can put Wiggins as the MVP. And then finally, Game 5, which I've kind of been talking about with the whole Wiggins versus Curry thing this whole time. But after a really close game, pretty much the whole way, the Warriors got ahead a little bit in the third. Celtics came back, but then the Warriors jumped ahead again in the fourth. Tatum had a little bit of a better game, shooting much better from the field. But again, everybody's talking about Andrew Wiggins, led the Warriors in points. Steph went 0 for 9 from 3, the worst of his playoff career. But I do expect him to bounce back, though. I do expect the Celtics to win Game 6 as my prediction. I I just don't think they'll let the Warriors win 3 in a row, but I do expect the Warriors to win it in 7. I think Steph will go crazy in Game 7. And of course, we have Game 6 Clay, but with how he's just been weaker this series, I don't know if he's going to have as much as he has in the past. And finally, to wrap things up, we're just going to go over the college baseball championship real quick with massive upset. Notre Dame winning it over Tennessee. Blew Tennessee out in Game 1. Tennessee blew them out in Game 2. Notre Dame bounced back to win it, though. And then kind of some surprises with unranked Oklahoma making it in. And then, of course, Arkansas was unranked, but we knew the talent they had. And they overcame some big series to get into the College World Series. First matchup, we got Oklahoma versus Texas A&M. And even though Oklahoma's had great success so far, I think Texas A&M is a powerhouse team that's going to make it to the championship. And I do think that A&M is going to beat Oklahoma. Then we have an interesting one with another powerhouse Texas team in the University of Texas taking on Notre Dame, coming off a huge upset. But you just can't bet for Notre Dame 2 times in a row, I think. Even though I think Notre Dame will give a great fight. They're in great spirits right now, but I think Texas will win it. Then a really interesting one with second-ranked Stanford, now the highest-ranked team left in the tournament, taking on Arkansas. And this is going to be really controversial, but I'm going to take Arkansas to win this. I just think they're really solid. Coming off so many great years there in the past couple years in the College World Series, I think this is another big upset. And then Ole Miss versus number 14 Auburn. I'm going to take Auburn in this one. Definitely, I would say the least important series out of these, because then I do think that Texas A&M is going to win it all. That's my prediction. Let's go ahead and just wrap it up here, guys. Thanks for tuning in.